All right, welcome back once again to another episode of the Contrarians. We've got various show concepts. This one is what we called Build a Bad Album. So we've done a few of these where, we love these bands. We basically go through and come up with one bad old school vinyl record by these bands, five songs per side of some of their worst material. It's just kind of a lighthearted way to poke some fun at these bands that we love so much. I've got Tim Derling with me this week. Tim, how you doing? You looking forward to this?
Oh yeah. People get bent out of shape on these, but it's all in fun. And these are challenging, but they are kind of interesting to see what songs you really don't prefer so much from bands that you do love a lot.
Yeah. So this week we're going to be doing AC/DC, and as we've done with the Aerosmith series, we're kind of like breaking these things up so we can come up with enough songs. So with AC/DC, obviously, what we're doing is we're going to do a Bon Scott era, and in the future we're going to do a Brian Johnson era AC/DC. So that's kind of the plan. So yeah, we had various titles for this. We're going to be calling this High Revoltage. But what else did we have? We had Power Outage, Let There Be Schlock, Side Street to Hell. But part of the fun is coming up with the titles for these things as well. But definitely coming up with the songs is cool too. So without further ado, Bon Scott era AC/DC. This is Build a Bad Album that we're calling High Revoltage, and I'm going to turn it over to Tim, who's going to give us the first 5 selections.
Okay, so like Aerosmith in the 70s, I found this a bit of a challenge to put together. But in the case of AC/DC, we are sort of given a little bit of grace by the fact that there are these handful of songs that didn't make international releases. So obviously they didn't feel that they were worthy of a full release. So that gets us a few things, or a few slots filled, which is where I'm going to start. My first one, I don't have the Australian Let There Be Rock, but that's where it originally hails from. I get this backtrack set, which nicely scoops up all the songs. Is Crabsody in Blue.
Right.
Now, this is just, to me, an attempt to write the Jack again. And the Jack was like a moment. Everybody knows it. It's a concert staple. Everybody sings it in concert. And this just seemed like Bon Scott thought he would try that again. And this time around, it just ends up being a boring blues song. So there's nothing particularly memorable about it. It's like a cross between, like, musically, it's a bit of something right on, but lyrically, it's more in the Jack territory. Next one is from the International High Voltage.
Nice.
And song is She's Got Balls. AC/DC have lots of ball songs in their career. And, Big Balls probably being the most famous. That's one that, Snicker, Snicker. I think I heard that song long before I realized it was AC/DC when I was really, really young. I don't know if I had a cousin play it, and I thought it was hilarious. She's Got Balls just doesn't have the same impact, if that's what the idea was behind it. I've always read Bon Scott said his wife at the time said, "Why don't you ever write a song about me?" And he wrote that song, and then she divorced him. I don't know. It sounds like a typical Bon Scott story, but it's not the greatest. It's not the worst, but that's my next one.
Yeah.
Next one is off Dirty Deeds, and it is Squealer. Just not one of my favorites. I can't really, again, this was hard to put together. Can't really put my finger on it. It's not as memorable as the other songs. Like, most of the Bon Scott stuff is, I think, pretty high quality. Like, I couldn't come up with anything off Highway to Hell or Power Age or Let There Be Rock, the international version. So yeah, Squealer. Next one is also on this, and actually this one is, I think, only on this version. I don't think it's on any of the Australian versions. Love at First Feel. It just sounds like something that would go into the Brian era where they're trying to do something again. And this just sounds like we've heard it before. It's just not that great a song, I don't think. It's all right. But most of the Bond stuff is a lot better than all right. And last one, I can't even read it. Oh, I know. Now we're back to now we're back to this album for Can I Sit Next to You, Girl? Like, this dates back to pre-Bon Scott. You could see versions of it with Dave Evans singing. It's more, I don't know if you'd call it more like glam or like old school glam or like Slade-ish. It doesn't sound like AC/DC to me. Now, there's other songs, and I think you're going to get to one of them that I didn't pick, but there's a reason for that. That's my 5. Again, there's nothing really wrong with any of these songs. It's just they had to slot in somewhere. So that's side 1, I guess.
All right. Yeah. And in the history of these things, I almost feel like this is probably one of the ones where I disagree with the most with you, but I agree somewhat on all of these. Yeah, Crab City and Blue. I just don't like that slinky bluesy vibe of it, and it is a snicker sort of lyric. She's Got Balls. I thought was basically I've never disliked that song more than other ones from that fairly anemic international debut of High Voltage. So it's all right. Squealer is kind of an interesting one where it's doing that super minimalistic thing, but it's got kind of a funky bass line to it too, which I always thought was kind of appealing. Love It First Feel, it's okay. Stodgy, it's one of their poppy boogie sort of things. And Can I Sit Next to You, Girl also feels just kind of in the middle, in the average of these ones. So here's what I've got. You tell me what you think after I'm done here. But I'm going to kick off with Love Song from the original Australian debut of High Voltage. It's kind of it's on there as well. It's kind of an easy picking one. It's one that is very different in the catalog. It doesn't sound anything like AC/DC. It's more of like a standard ballad. Even the funny thing is that AC/DC is so simple and minimalistic that even when they do a simple ballad like this, it actually sounds more complicated than actually most AC/DC songs, which is really weird. And it's very crooned, so it's an okay song. It's a ballad essentially from this, and like I say, it sounds nothing like AC/DC for that reason. Next, I'm going to go with School Days from the Australian TNT. And so essentially, yeah, there's the CD of it as well. So what I don't like about this one, number one, is it's a cover. It's a Chuck Berry song. I love Bon Scott era AC/DC. I've basically called AC/DC my favorite band of all time. And I totally agree with you. The funny thing that happens with this band and with bands that I love so much is that when you're on board with an album and you love it so much, even if there were weak songs on it, you are championing the band at that point, and you love those songs and you love the totality of it. And that's why Power Age and Highway to Hell, the exact same two that you mentioned, two of my favorite albums of all time. Absolutely. There's just no way I could have picked anything from that. So yeah, but we'll get to one of the other ones here in a second. I've got a controversial pick. So yeah, School Days off of this. So the one reason, like I say, it's a cover, but the other reason is, and this is a theme with my picks and with yours, when they're in kind of like rote boogie mode, where they're really just going to their roots and they're not adding any of that AC/DC charm to it, and it's just kind of a simple, boogie kind of tune, it's not going to win as far as I'm concerned. So RIP, Rock in Peace. There's your international Dirty Deeds. So yeah, it's R.I.P. and in parentheses, Rock in Peace. It's a corny title. It's not that good. When you make a pun, like Def Leppard, I suppose a rock is out of the question, right? When you make a pun and it's not very precise to the punniness of it, it just sort of sounds dumb. But also Rock in Peace is just not a very good song. It's kind of like another one of these kind of dull boogies of there. And to their credit and the label's credit and the good taste of Malcolm and Angus, they realized that this was not a song that was up to their standards, so they haven't put it on the international versions. Then I'm going to go with there's going to be some rockin', which is also so it's also on this, and I believe it's on, hang on, is it on the international as well? I believe
it is.
Yeah, so that's the other thing. I made a note about this. This is a song that I don't think is particularly strong, and they actually make it the first track on side 2. of our international version. But it's also on the Australian version as well. And again, the idea is it's just kind of like a dull rote boogie sort of thing. You're not getting the true AC/DC vibe. It could be by any band trying to be dull rote boogie. And so my controversial pick here, boy, did I get a lot of heck for Fairies Wear Boots on Cabbage Bloody Cabbage, our episode. But I stand by everything I said by that. So, but yeah, all the comments are about how dare Martin pick Fairies Wear Boots. So I'm gonna pick something from this to make a point, and I'm gonna pick Bad Boy Boogie. This is the first, there you go. This is the first AC/DC album I ever got as a kid. I was 14. I got this on one of our cross Canada trips, I think in Winnipeg, and I bought this in High Voltage at the same time. But this is the first one I saw, and I remember looking at this. So my point about this is this is an album that I really don't go to too often because it's got this sort of sheen of menace or depression about it that I feel the exact same way as I feel about Black Sabbath Volume 4 or Vol 4 to be formal about it. So this in Vol 4, I really feel this sort of uniformity, smotheringness of the heavy guitars, kind of lack of hooks kind of thing sometimes about it. And so I'm just my fandom of Let There Be Rock as an album has just sort of faded, wilted slowly over time. And Bad Boy Boogie, I think, is indicative of this whole thing. It's a menacing song. It's snarling. It sounds a little off-putting. It doesn't give me that big warm hug that other AC/DC songs give me. And it's also more or less set up like a boogie, and I don't it like it's a boogie crossed with heavy metal, and I think the heavy metal that they do to it is not particularly inventive. So there you go. That's my 5 for side 2 of High Revoltage. What do you think?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with those. I mean, again, it's hard to pick on the Bond era, right? Love Song is an easy target, and I was going to put it on there, but I didn't. And the reason I didn't is because it is so unlike AC/DC that it's bizarre. Like, it's actually bizarre. Yeah. The beginning guitar bit almost reminds me of Queen. Like, it doesn't sound like it. You could put that on to people that have listened to AC/DC their whole lives, and they would be like, what is that? Who is that? That's not AC/DC. It's got this twiddly guitar thing, and then the second guitar, dong, da da dong. Like I said, it reminds me of Queen. Yeah. And then it settles into this really boring kind of ballad, and you can kind of tell it's Bond, but it kind of really doesn't sound like him. And there's not much to the song after that intro. It doesn't live up to the intro. But I didn't pick it because number one, I figured that one of us would pick it. Yeah. But because it is so it's not boring, it's not predictable, it's not boogie, it's really strange. It's a really odd track for them. School Days, yeah, I mean the Australian TNT, which is the only album that of that era that I have the CD of it as I held up, and I got that because I wanted to have a version of TNT because it's the only album that doesn't have a counterpart named after it, although it's pretty much High Voltage as we knew it. It's pretty much the international High Voltage. There's only a couple songs different. I think 7 of the 9 songs on the TNT album ended up on the international High Voltage. Really, only 2 songs from the Australian High Voltage ended up on the international High Voltage. Kind of confusing. Kind of the same thing with the first 2 Triumph albums in Canada. They meshed them together for Rock and Roll Machine, but this one's very lopsided. I think TNT is the better album of the 2 Australian ones. But yeah, School Days, a cover. I mean, we know they love Chuck Berry, and that's the roots of what they do. Didn't necessarily have to cover one of his songs. They could just write another song that was it sounded like a dirtier version of a Chuck Berry song, which is kind of what they did. There's going to be some rocking. Yeah, I mean, they got a lot of those those blues songs in those early days. That's neither here nor there. To me, it's like Love at First Feel. It's just kind of, okay. It is kind of strange that did make both versions. I think, maybe there's better songs that they could have put on there. It's funny to think that they had Jailbreak, which I think is one of the classic Bon Scott songs, in their back pocket, and they did not put it on the international version of Dirty Deeds. To me, that would have been a slam dunk. But that's a curious release anyway, right? That international one, they popped that out. Atlantic popped that out after Back in Black and didn't really make it known that it was older material. And that's why that album in the Bon Scott era sold so much more than the rest of them. But yeah, let's see what else. I didn't write down your picks here. Just let me open up. What else did you pick?
We've got R.I.P. There's going to be some rock and
Bad
Boy Boogie.
Bad Boy Boogie, I kind of disagree. I really like that one because to me, I don't hear a lot of Boogie in it. I think the only Boogie is in the title.
It's the blues kind of vocal phrasing and structure as well, right?
It does, but musically, I'm just thinking of the whole mid section, and I just think it's got some cool parts to it. But I didn't want to pick anything off of Let There Be Rock. I just think that's such a strong album. R.I.P. Rock and Peace, exactly the same things. There's going to be rocking. It's just da 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 da. They follow it. You can almost do an entire album of Bon era stuff where they do that. So yeah, I mean, you put this out as an album, and I think diehard AC/DC fans, at least back in the day, would have bought it because there were songs on there that weren't on any of the international releases. Doesn't mean they're going to listen to it all that much. So this was an interesting exercise because it's when a band is so good, you have to pick something, and I think we've both come up with some pretty acceptable titles, and both of us, not surprisingly, dug into those Australian only releases. So I think that says a lot about the quality of what we did initially here.
Yeah. An interesting theme here. I think the Boogie stuff, whether they wrote it or not, is sort of comfort food for them. I know I've mentioned this before, but I probably on our other AC/DC show. Although, what did we do? I think we did a worst albums. Anyways, I'm sure I've mentioned this story before, but I got to interview Malcolm in person at the hotel after the Toronto Rocks thing. And the one thing that really stuck with me from that interview was how he basically said that when you're playing those tough bars and those farmers come in and they're gonna let you know if they don't like what you're doing, and it's like you play a boogie for them, you play what they want, you scramble and just make them happy, sort of thing. And I think this Boogie thing, whether it's songs, and I know I'm going to get hecked for my pronunciation of Boogie. That's a standard one when I go and see of Tranquility all the time. But I think when they cover somebody like that, it gives them fond memories of keeping the crowd happy. And it gives them fond memories of the music they grew up with as brothers of 9, 10, 11 years old or whatever, and older brothers having these old rock and roll records. And then they write some songs in homage of that thing. So I think that's what you're getting here as well. But anyways, there you go, folks. Let us know what you think in the comments below about this whole situation, this whole high Revoltage album situation. I think, Tim, what do you think? You want to come back again and we'll do Brian Johnson? Like
Aerosmith, we get the tough one out of the way. Let's keep going.
Yeah. Sounds good. So let us know in the comments below. You can you can subscribe. Remember that there's a whole Patreon situation. We've got a whole network of people. You see, a lot of our shows are these Patreon panels. So if you join our Patreon situation, you can be part of those panels where we look at Dark Horse albums and all sorts of other things. But there you go. Go listen to some AC/DC high Revoltage. Give us your if you're feeling ambitious, give us your complete track listing in the comments below. For myself and Tim Derling, we'll see you later.